Man, I had such a great time talking about the operation of God today and the work of his hands. Again, if you haven't ever read the scriptures on the operation of God, if you want something I wrote about that, please let me know. I was talking to a friend about the gall of bitterness, life's bitter cup that everybody drinks. And so people either become bitter or they throw rocks at God and other people for their misery and their bitterness. They don't. We all have to touch it at some point in our life. It is the one thing in Hebrews 12. Despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither would grow weary. God shakes everything that can be shaken, so what remains is Him. Everybody gets shaken. Most people, however, will just become bitter, and then you make everybody pay, right? And I was telling a friend a story, but before I tell that story, I think I want to say something because, my husband has one of the most famous NFL stars for a father that, and he did a DNA test and found out that his father not only invented the hook shot, he also pitched to Babe Ruth. He played professional basketball. He saved the NFL. He was one of the first people ever inducted to the NFL Hall of Fame. He played in one of the most famous games ever played, and he holds 3 NFL records that'll probably never be broken. And so he never knew this, right? But he played football. He tried out for the 49ers, the Raiders. He met a lot of famous people. He was going to be a professional boxer. He was going to be trained by a professional boxer. He had a lot of things fall through. And had anybody known that he was actually Ernie Never's son, everything in his life would have been completely different. It would have opened all kinds of doors for him. But is he sad? Is he bitter? No, he's not. Even before he knew Ernie Nevers was his father, he saw that the Lord shut a lot of doors intentionally that could have been his destruction, that probably would have made a lot of other people bitter. And it was an incredible testimony even before he found out about Ernie Nevers. It's just mind blowing, because I think his football coach in high school would have been much nicer to him. It would have opened a lot of doors, needless to say. So, to the story, I'm telling my friend this story about when I was a kid. I was turning 13 during the summer. I don't know what year it was, but it was the year I was 12 turning 13. And I decided that this lonely, broken soul of mine needed to put myself forth to get my needs met. And I didn't even understand the spirit at work in me, but I just thought if I could become a cheerleader, everything would be okay. So all summer long, I learned how to do the splits. I learned how to do handsprings. I could, do those walkovers. I could do a back handspring if I was on a hill. And, I became this little athlete. I have a nephew that was a really high-end cheerleader on a big college team. He was a college cheerleader. They don't have him with the NFL, or he probably would have moved on, and he's gone on to do all kinds of feats physically. Anyway, needless to say, there was a Thursday afternoon, early evening. Before the tryout the next Friday, I was in a gym. And also at that time, started going to Bible studies of a priest. And so I was really inclined in my heart to the Lord. I was praying all the time. Lord, help me please be a cheerleader. Please, 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 please. You know what I need. And so on the Thursday night before the tryout, even the lady told me I was going to get the one position that was open. She was pretty convinced of it, but she still needed to go through with the tryout. But I was in a gym with one of those horses that you flip on, and I was late, and I'm running across the gym, and the thing is like 2,000 pounds on wheels, and I couldn't stop it, and it hit the wall and crushed my foot, and then I'm in a cast. Cheerleading is gone. All my hopes for anything to get my needs met anyway were dashed to the core. So here I'm a lonely, needy child with a stepfather that cusses at me all the time under his breath, a mom that's gone all the time. I was so empty, so lonely, so needy, not even very attached to my friend. But I went over to my friend's house, and some of you that know my story, I had a friend that was in law school when I talked to her about my past, but same lady. And we went to the psychiatrist's house, who was her uncle, that ended up, he was a huge psychiatrist for a big, huge corporation. And he ended up becoming really depressed and tried to kill me, my friend, and his 3 children, and did kill one of them and slit his wrist in Las Vegas. So his psychiatry, even all the manuals he wrote for college textbooks, didn't do him a lot of good. So I'm telling my friend this story today, and she goes, wow, it was probably the Lord all along. Maybe your life would have turned out a lot worse if you'd actually become a cheerleader. And I never realized how bitter. I mean, I was so almost suicidal the night I was with my friend. Thank God I was there with her at her uncle's apartment that night, because I might have gone into the whole pit. I felt like abandoned by God totally, hated by God, and that I was never going to get what I needed. I was totally convinced. And because I responded that way, I became very bitter. I drank life's bitter cup, and I drank one big, huge glass of it. And I started a fast decline after that. Not only did I they made me the honorary pep club, but that wasn't enough for me. I wasn't convinced I was going to get what I needed as the president of the pep club. And I started smoking with the kids that hung out in the schoolyard, the bad kids. I started doing drugs with them. I started playing hooky. I ran away from home when I was 13 to another state for a month. Never told my mom where I was. And then I left home when I hadn't even turned 14 for good. So not only was I under a lot of self-condemnation, I was desperate to get my needs met, to fill that empty place that my mom couldn't fill for me, my stepfather couldn't fill for me, men couldn't fill it for me. And I went on a hunt to put myself forth to get my needs met. The pride of life. I went chasing after the winds of vanity to fill my empty soul. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so Jesus said he came for the fall and the rise of many. And I began a deep, dark fall for probably the next, till I was at least 25, 11, 12 years. And so I was talking to this lady on the phone today, and we all create a lot of Ishmaels when we're led by the flesh. If you read Romans 8 again, it has all the answers that pertain to life and godliness there. It also has the answers for why people's lives suck. So I'm talking to this lady who's got a lot of bad stuff in her past, and she's got a lot of problems, and she hasn't gotten what she's needed or thought she's going to get what she needs. And again, she's created a lot of Ishmaels. So I was telling her about, and if you don't know what Ishmaels are, it's like we walk after the flesh, we do our own thing, and then we just expect God to scrape up the mess and everything should be okay. But the truth is, a lot of times we eat the fruit of our own ways. We're filled with our own devices. God gives us our heart's desire and sends leanness to our soul. So like her, we all have a lot of baggage in our past of walking after the flesh. That equals death. Thinking we're going to be fulfilled, satisfied, have everything we need, get all the love we need, all the satisfaction we need, chasing the wind, right? And so there's money involved in her situation. There's sorrow and pain involved because of a death. And, I was telling her that in some ways we just kind of like King David, we have to admit our sin and start living life out of being forgiven and give up the cup of bitterness. But when you drink it down and you think everything is man and God's fault, and you don't see that it's because you're controlling, and it's your control without any influence from a father that has gotten you where you're at, and you're eating the fruit of your own way, filled with your own devices, and your life crashes and burns, but it's got to be God's fault and everybody else's, right? We have to give up that bitterness and just own it. Own our Ishmaels. And Ishmael was the baby that, not Adam and Eve, Sarah and, sorry, I'm thinking of, not Adam. I got Adam on the brains, but the one who came out of the desert. I don't know, I can't think of his name right now, but Sarah's husband, he had a baby because he didn't believe what God said. And so he actually had a lot of problems with that child that he had out of wedlock. It was Ishmael was his name. He had a lot of problems because of having a baby the wrong way. And so did King David. And, you know, sorry, I'm really tired. I wish that's bugging me that I can't remember his name. Sarah and Abraham. There it is, Abraham. Abraham created an Ishmael, and we do too when we walk after the flesh. And we control little babies. You know, we're little boss babies, because that's exactly the seduction of Satan. Again, he went in and Eve ate and drank his words, and he was an angelic, beautiful being, not a snake. And he spoke words, and she ate them and drank them, right? And she got bitter, and every demonic thing happened after that. Once you drink the cup of bitterness, welcome to all satanic lies are going to go off in your head, and you're going to be in the bondage and gall of bitterness, because the only power Satan has over us is lies. And if we'll eat him and drink him, he'll be glad to kill, steal, and destroy our life away, because it's the only power he has. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And walking after the Spirit is following the voice of truth. And walking after the Spirit is actually not shutting up the voice in your soul to default in your head. Meanwhile, in their thoughts, either accusing or excusing. It's okay, they could do their own thing their own way and then blame God and man because they did their own thing their own way. You know, it's the recipe for insanity, and it makes a lot of people crazy and depressed. And I wish I had somebody that could teach me these things when I was little. I never even talked to anybody about this stuff. I had nobody in my life that connected to me in truth at all. And, you know, just seeing it for the first time, that was when I opened the door to bitterness. It's the day I became a bitter soul against the Lord. I never went back to church. I never went back to Bible studies. I felt forsaken by God. My soul became bitter, and I became the devil's playhouse, and walked in lies and shut up God's voice in my conscience for me to decide what was good and evil, and my life crashed and burned because of it. I walked in the light of my own sparks, and the bed of sorrow blows people's minds when I tell them about it. And you know, I'm going to pray right now, Lord, that you help people see the operation of the devil to make them bitter, and the operation of God to build them up, to get understanding to the things that go on there in their life, to the ways they've walked after the flesh themselves. Because we're either going to live life out of being forgiven. All we like sheep have gone astray and done our own thing our own way and blame God and man, right? And you know, there's a lot of bitter Christians that don't understand the source of their bitterness is their own control. You know, rebellion is the sin of witchcraft, and idolatry is self-love. And people are control freaks. I was, and I know a lot of them, and they blame God and man for their problems. They don't look at their own control without any influence from a good father. It's a tragedy on the earth today for sure. And I'm going to talk about that some more in my next video, about the cunning craftiness of men that we all need to get saved for. But I'm going to end this for now, and I pray that you get saved from the gall of a bitter soul, and that the Lord would help you own your past, your own flesh walk that's caused you destruction, because it's never been God's fault. Amen.